Hello, my name is Annie Brooks, and I am the Director of Education at the Parkinson's Foundation, where I oversee, among other things, our Care Partner programs. Not everyone recognizes the children of people with Parkinson's as part of the caregiving team, especially when their parent was diagnosed while they were still fairly young. But I'm a firm believer that Parkinson's is a family affair. With that in mind, I'm here today with Zachary and Caitlin, siblings whose father has Parkinson's. They've agreed to share their experience with the intersection of Parkinson's disease and their LGBTQ plus identities. Zachary, I would love to start with you and have you introduce yourself.
Hi, Annie. My name is Zachary. Pronouns are he, his, and I'm gay.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. My pronouns are she, her, and I generally identify as queer.
Can you guys tell me a little bit more about the Parkinson's in your family and your connection to the disease?
Absolutely. So our father has young onset Parkinson's disease. He was diagnosed a few years ago, and our grandfather, on the other hand, was also diagnosed only a few years ago, but obviously was several years older than our father when he was diagnosed as well. I think we knew about our grandfather first for a few years, and then our father afterwards. Um, and obviously, as the son and grandson of two people with Parkinson's, it's something that's on my mind pretty frequently. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that it's a concern of mine as I get older as well, and definitely something on my radar as I may or may not experience symptoms as I get older.
I'm curious if you feel that your queer identities have intersected at all with your experience of Parkinson's disease in the family. Do you see any overlap or any conflict or similarities there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Katie, I don't want to, if you want to go first, let me know, or jump in if you want. But I know for me at least, I even thinking about the time that our dad told us that he was officially diagnosed after a few years of incorrect diagnoses and a really arduous process to finally get to that diagnosis, which I know is fairly common for a lot of people, especially with young onset PD. I remember thinking that it felt exactly like what it felt like to come out to my dad years earlier. So I came out to my family when I was 16, and I if it was like he was coming out to me, just with different information, and it the steps that he went through were the same that I and many others in the LGBTQ community have to go through to come out to your family, your friends. He sat us down. I could tell he was really nervous. There was a lot of trepidation in his voice. He shares this news, and then it's sort of like the fear and the waiting to see how we react. And then, of course, immediately that sort of feeling of relief once it's all over. And it was in that moment that I realized people with chronic illness, especially something like Parkinson's disease, have to go through a coming out the same way that if you're gay, queer, LGBTQ in any way, you often have to go through that in some shape or form with some loved ones in your life.
I think another important part with that is that with being part of the LGBTQ plus community and part of the Parkinson's community, there's not a lot of representation in media and not a lot of education and resources easily out there for people. And I think once people are able to get to those resources and find their community that they fit in, they realize that they're no longer alone. So I feel like there's a lot of similarities between those two communities and the need to have other people around you that understand what you're going through.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of times, I'll speak for myself as someone who is part of the queer community. I feel that I'm responsible for educating those around me who are not part of this community or living with the same experience. And I see the same thing for folks who are connected to Parkinson's disease. Have you seen that sort of in your family?
I think we've definitely seen that with our father. He's been really good with educating us throughout the whole process, especially when he first was diagnosed. He sat us down to let us know kind of what we could expect to come in the future. And every now and then, he'll let us know as well what his symptoms are or what we can expect to see changing. So I think just educating those around you definitely helps prepare them so that way there's no surprises and everyone can be supporting throughout the entire journey.
Yeah, and vice versa, right? So it's like I feel like over the years we've also educated our family, our dad, everyone on LGBTQ issues as well, and explaining what non-binary means, or gender-neutral pronouns. It's like a big conversation, especially with people our parents' age, having to sit them down and have that conversation. Um, Not necessarily because it's specific to my identity or Katie's identity, but it's important to us that they have that information as they walk through the world, because we're part of a bigger community than just our own identities. And in the same vein, like to Katie's point, Dad's definitely done his job to educate us on not just his own experience with the disease, but also um, other people's experiences, and our grandfather's experience, and also as our dad gets older, what we can potentially expect as his symptoms come and go and change. And it's not always the easiest conversation to have back and forth. I mean, it's a lot of energy and effort put on the person to educate other people, but I think that meeting halfway has been really helpful for us. And it's sort of inspired and pushed me to, Dad might send me an article or chat with me for a few minutes, and then I think, all right, you know what, I should do a little more research myself, and then kind of go the extra mile. And I feel like he has also done a great job at doing the same with respect to LGBTQ issues as well.
Do you find that your dad or your grandfather's Parkinson's has any impact on the family dynamics around your identities and your experience of the world because of them?
Hmm.
I think that we're very lucky with our family and that everyone's very accepting and loving. And I think that the only difference that we've seen with the cognitive changes that Parkinson's has is the um, sort of like fixation or hesitation to understand certain things, but it doesn't come from a place of not accepting or not loving. It's more of those cognitive differences that you see as the Parkinson's progresses, which of course we see more with our grandfather than our father right now.
Yeah, that's at present, I don't, yeah, to Katie's point, I don't currently feel that there's much of an impact, but it is something that I feel like we have started to think about as we get older, and as both of them get older as well. Something almost like I'm bracing for, which is difficult, right? If you are in a family where your parents are accepting of who you are when you come out as gay or as queer, the realization that as they get older, as the disease progresses cognitively, that there could be a day where they suddenly say something that is totally um, against what they've presented to you previously in terms of their acceptance. It's shaking. I mean, it can really upset you. And I know we've experienced this, not as much with our father's Parkinson's, but our grandmother has pretty late stage dementia right now. And we've also experienced on that side with her this conversation of whoa, like, no, wait, she totally accepts me. Why would she say something like that? And it's kind of having to separate the person from the disease to a degree. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that while, you know, dementia is not always part of Parkinson's, it can be.
Hmm.
Um, and cognitive changes, though often mild, are really common.
Mm.
And how they progress looks different from person to person. And so it's hard to plan. It's hard to know what to expect. And especially, since your dad was diagnosed so young, he's going to live with Parkinson's for a really long time. Which, I know he's doing really well right now, and that's wonderful. But I'm curious if you guys have talked with him and with others in your family about some of the scary stuff that could come up in the future, and sort of what expectations are for family roles, or how you want to deal with any big changes that come up.
I think we're very lucky to have our stepmom, because she currently would be my father's primary caregiver and does an excellent job helping him every day. But as the child who lives the closest, I know that if anything were to change or happen, that I would be right there to help step in. And it is a conversation that we don't have often with him, but he has brought it up before. So it's just something to definitely be aware of and prepare for as much as you can, even though you can't ever fully prepare for those situations.
Yeah, and in terms of family dynamics and also I'd say to a degree gender roles as well, I think having a father be diagnosed with this disease, it kind of subverts your, I don't know, understanding of how what you're raised to believe in terms of uh, you never as a child you're not really taught to you know worry about your dad, right? Dad's going to protect all of us, dad's going to take care of us. If anything, you're probably raised to care and be more concerned about your mom in a sort of traditional gender role upbringing. So to that point, kind of like to Katie's point, I think that we haven't really tackled these conversations yet because we're still working in that mindset. And I think there's a little bit of unlearning that needs to happen there because anybody, we should be caring about everybody. It's not just because you're the dad doesn't mean you don't need to be cared for and attended to. And especially with a diagnosis like Parkinson's, it's going to change the not just the family dynamics, but I think also some of the sort of gender roles that we've come to passively accept. And yeah, I'm very grateful to my stepmother for everything she's doing right now. I think that, I don't want to speak necessarily for Katie, but, we're in our 20s, we're trying to build careers of our own and lives of our own. And it's been a balance, to try and figure out how much time should I be giving to my family right now? And I don't want to just completely go out on my own and spend all my time building a life for myself. But at the same time, you can't just, move back home and be there every day because you're trying to do both. And it's a challenge.
I don't want to make any assumptions. But I'm curious, as you two are sort of navigating the dating pool, if that's something that you're doing, are you thinking about your future with the family? And, Zachary, as you pointed out, your concerns about any genetic pieces of Parkinson's that might put you at, a higher risk of getting it when you are connecting with others.
Mm.
Does that cross your mind in any way? Or does that play into it?
Yeah, all the time. I don't, this is not something I talk about really, even with the people I've dated, and I'm currently in a relationship with someone, and I haven't brought it up to them. They know that my dad has Parkinson's, and I've mentioned in passing my grandfather as well, and whether or not they've also had this thought. And for clarification, my partner's non-binary, so they use they them pronouns. It's something that concerns me because I fear about being a burden, which I know is a concern of people who, are diagnosed. Sorry. It's interesting though, because it's all in my head, right? This is not, I don't have a diagnosis. It's not set in stone, but it is absolutely a concern of mine, as I get older. But I think what I've seen in my dad and my stepmom is that if you do have someone who loves you, it's not going to matter. They're going to be there for you. And I think whether it's Parkinson's or someone struggling with an identity, the people who love you will love you no matter what.
I appreciate you digging deep into such a sensitive topic and getting really vulnerable.
Yeah, no problem.
This is all, it can get really heavy. Katie, I don't want to assume that you have something to say or nothing to say, but I want to make space in case you want to jump in.
Just back on the family roles and planning for everything. My boyfriend and I recently bought a house in January, and I specifically wanted to buy one that was closer to my father in case at any point I did need to step in as a caregiver. So I made sure that we were close enough by that I could be there if he needed me to be there, but that way I still had my independence and my freedom to kind of build my own life and have my own home, and start that chapter for myself while still being there for my family when they need me.
I think a lot of people on the outside don't think about the future that consciously don't think about, oh gosh, if I'm needed, I want to be available. And having to balance, the desire for independence with the willingness and sort of the expectation of yourself that you will be there if your family needs you. And I think especially because you two have had a positive and supportive experience around your identities and all of the intricacies that come with that. I'm not surprised that you guys are being thoughtful. I imagine that this is a challenge for a lot of young folks who have loved ones living with Parkinson's or other, chronic progressive diseases. Is there anything that comes to mind that you would want other members of the LGBTQ plus community to understand about Parkinson's disease?
I think for myself, what I would just want people to understand about Parkinson's is that it's a lot more than just the tremors. It's a lot more than just what you see on the surface. There's a lot cognitively that changes as well. So I would just want others to try to educate themselves on all of the intricacies of Parkinson's and what it includes, so that way they're prepared for it and educated on it.
And what about sort of the flip side of that? Is there anything you would want the Parkinson's community to understand about other folks who are, sort of like your family, where there are people who are part of the Parkinson's community, as well as those who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, and especially folks who, individuals who fall into both categories?
Yeah, I feel like it's important to remember that the LGBTQ community is just that. It's a community. It was built over, decades, if not centuries, of coming together to support one another throughout highs and lows. And I think that for somebody who is diagnosed with Parkinson's and is feeling lost, maybe they come from a family where no one has ever been diagnosed with that before, and they don't know what to do and they feel alone. I think that looking to the LGBTQ community is important because they'll be able to realize that they're not alone, and there is a community out there within the Parkinson's, the Parkinson's community that will support them and help them through uh, every step of the way. And I think that that is very reflective of what the LGBTQ plus community has um, done for so many people for so long. And I think that they can find a similarity in that, a found family.
I definitely agree with that as well. The importance of having a support network, and finding a local Parkinson's group or community, or a local LGBTQ plus community or group, so that way you can have your own support network through with you through all of these times.
I really appreciate this conversation, Annie. I think that to talk about the intersection of Parkinson's disease and LGBTQ identity, at first I thought, oh, well, those are kind of different, that there's not really that much in common. But the more we think about it and talk about it, there is a lot to be said. And I think that this is only the start of a conversation. I think there's a lot more, voices that can weigh in on this, and a lot more perspectives that can add to this conversation. So I hope that, our discussion today can encourage more conversation on this topic and encourage people to talk to one another as well, not just in settings like this, but also within their own families, to their friends and in their social networks, and reach out to people and just be there for one another to have these conversations. They're really, really helpful and very important.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much again for the openness and the willingness to talk about these difficult things. I hope that as time goes on, as you said, we'll have more conversations like this, and the door is open for the three of us to come back together and discuss again, and maybe bring some other folks who are living in that intersection between the Parkinson's community and the LGBTQ plus community together again.